Right, councillors, if we could please be upstanding and observe a minute's silence. I have condolences today for Mrs. Rosaline Balderson of Barcaldine and Mr. Scott Alexander Thomas of Jericho. Councillors or staff aware of any other? No? We could please observe silence. Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather today and their elders, both past, present, emerging. Councillors, I call now for declarations of conflict of interest, for starting on my right, Councillor Pitt. PCOIs?
Mr Mayor, I don't think I have any, but I'll reserve the right to bring it up.
Await the advice of your very learned councillors. We'll be very quick to point it out to you, I'm sure.
I'm happy to have that.
Councillor Gleeson.
I don't believe so, Mr Mayor.
Councillor.
I don't believe so, Mr Mayor.
You do, sorry.
Yes,
that's
Mr.
what I'm
Mayor.
in charge for, sorry.
With respect to described conflicts of interest, I inform the meeting that I have PCOIs in the following matters. 3.11, the tenders for flood damage repairs. As a close associate of mine as a tenderer, the name of the close associate is Michael Horman Transport, and the nature of the relationship is they are my employer and also a client of my sole trader business, Camelot Enterprises, for this project. The next item is 3.7.4, was a request for assistance from the Alpha Tourism Gates. As a close associate of mine is a supplier of concrete in the Alpha area, and that this is a council project cost increase outside of the budget process. And the close associate is Michael Horman Transport, as they are my employer. And out of an abundance of caution, 3.9.2, the request for assistance from the Barcaldine Clay Target Association. As a close associate of mine is the only supplier of concrete in the Barcaldine area. It's a bit of a stretch, I know, but and the name of that close associate is Michael Horman Transport, as they are my employer. And it's mainly because of the dollar figure, and I get the impression that the project doesn't go without council's assistance.
Thank you. Councillor Plum.
I don't believe so, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rogers, do you have any PCOs? Does any councillor present believe any other councillor present may have overlooked a prescribed conflict of interest? Councillor Peoples, do you have any declarable conflicts of interest?
I don't think so, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Gleeson.
I don't believe so, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hanson.
Not that I'm aware of, Mr Mayor.
Councillor
No, Mr Mayor.
Plum.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have informed the meeting that I've got a declarable conflict of interest in 3.8.1, the Aramac District Manager's report. The nature of the interest is Lakeland Sculpture Trail. Just as previous history, I would like to participate because it's a report.
Does any councillor wish to change the approved status for Councillor Rogers in this respect? No. Good to
I
go.
also have a declarable interest in 3.1.1, the tenders for flood damage. It's the Lakeland Sculpture Trail is situated partly on the Aramac Jericho Road. So I'll read the meeting.
I can understand your abundance of caution. We make that a quorum. Does any councillor present believe any other councillor present may have overlooked a declarable conflict of interest? That being the case, I then go to Parks. If we could please confirm minutes of the general meeting 16 May. Can we receive them first, please? Motion, councillor Hanson, seconder, councillor Plum. Those in favour? 7-0. Debate or alterations, errors or omissions? Can I have somebody move that they be confirmed as presented? Councillor Hanson, seconded councillor Plum. Those in favour? 7-0. Do any staff or councillors present have petitions in the correct style? No. Reports. Confidential reports. I move, as we move into this, as councillors have declared, leave the room. Can I have a resolution to close the meeting under section 254 something J? Need? Appropriately, just on the basis that
Commission.
yeah.
I'll move that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Second to councillor Hanson. Those in favour? Carried 5-0.
Mr Mayor, please.
Oh, kill this. Closed session. Councillors, the resolution is that we award package 1 and 2 with further tenant amounts inclusive of GST of $2,693,384.93 and $2,130,336.23. Do I have a mover? Councillor Peoples. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanson. Is there debate?
Debate. We're just exclusive.
Inclusive.
Inclusive. I just want that word written there, please.
Mr Mayor, we can't put a time on that.
Well, no, because there's tender documents that went out called for 12 months. And there'd be permission in there for weather impacts.
We'll just do the undertaking to proceed as quick as we can.
Through the chair, part of the conversation, part of the submission was based on their timelines, so there's certainly ability for us to hold them to those timelines as a result of that.
Can we put that in
What's in the documents?
I'd probably hold it out, because all we're doing with this resolution is purely awarding the tender on the basis of that price. There's contractual obligations, but they're not really debated as part of this resolution. Those in favour? 5-0. Thank you for 0 notice.
No worries.
For discussing that for us.
No worries.
In my report, I've got RPC stuff and anything else. You want Richard to take the heat for me, or do you want to answer all the questions?
If you want to hang around, have you got 5 minutes? We're one meeting.
You'd like me to?
Yeah, that'd be great. Somebody can just ask councillors Arthur and Rogers to rejoin the room.
We just have an expert.
Yeah.
That'll be nice to hear.
Oh, that's all I can.
Take a chair.
Can I have somebody move my information report to be received, please? Councillor Plum, second Councillor Hanson. Those in favour? 6-0. councillors, you'll see there on the information report, subsequent to this report being developed, some other meetings occurred yesterday. I met with NBNCO regarding the rollout of the RCP2 project in Alpha and the alternatives for access to fibre in Aramac. There will be some follow-up out of that meeting for our team here to pursue. I also met with Ross Garner yesterday as well with respect to developing the next stage of, or the first stage of the BRES funding. That will be the follow-up meeting scheduled for a couple of weeks' time, which will then bring to you a roadmap and some documents for your perusal after we work them up around the governance structure. It will, obviously there's no surprises from what we've already discussed in this space, but it's now time, obviously we're at the point here, we've got the money, so we've actually got to bring the board together, put our nominees onto it. We've already approved them, we've just got to sign the legal instrumentation, and then I'm hoping that from that we can then give you a roadmap for when the shovels are going into the ground. On the sidelines of ALGA, which the National General Assembly of which happened in Canberra, I had a number of meetings that didn't appear in my diary, but were just opportunistic meetings with cabinet ministers and backbenchers from both sides of the House. Thanked the federal government for its consideration of FAGs, asked for them to consider a rapid re-indexation towards 1% of taxation revenue. Don't hold your breath for that happening anytime soon, but fair and reasonable increases I think aren't too far away. And that what they are is fair and reasonable across the board, not just tinkering with the methodology as has happened in Queensland's case. The AMCI Epsilon project is another meeting to discuss the initial steps for the public consultation phase of that coal mine project that's on the books for Alpha. And I have had a number of meetings to line up the commencement of the local opportunities for Copper Street 2.0 coming to us from the north via Aramac. So there's been some preliminary meetings in that respect, and will be more detailed on the ground meetings over the coming weeks.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, what was that one?
Copper Street, the big power project from Townsville to Mount Isa.
Okay.
We're looking at facilitating its an off-spur construction to here from Gildan via Aramac.
Okay.
To allow for renewable energy capacity in this part of the world to be fed into the Copper Street project in the north. Effectively powering the northwest Minerals province with renewables from the coast or inland Queensland. So, Morgan's been doing a power of work in that space. Pardon me, I'm big with the puns today. Pardon that pun, but yes, and he's, I've been doing some work that he's lined up meetings for me, and then we're now facilitating a full regional visit from the CEO of Copper Street to commence building the business case to do it.
And that'd be above ground?
Correct.
Good project?
Good project for construction, but a good project for future economic development, either of renewable energy generation capacity or utilisation of green power generated elsewhere by businesses along that route.
So that'll give the opportunity right along the line.
Full northern corridor, from here to the northern corridor, I should say, can be utilised, yeah. Very premature, and anybody watching at home don't go and think we'll take it to the bank, but we're working very closely on that.
That's twice that.
I'm not swapping you chair, we're all lunches. And the last meeting there that's listed, I met with Shannon Fenderman and her office. Okay, Council?
I tried to hold it in the first time. My apologies.
You're the only one who was listening, obviously. I have been working closely with Nathan Rule from the LGAQ advocacy team to lobby the government for the continuation of the funding that we utilise for Outback Futures. That's what that meeting is around mental health funding. I had a very good meeting with her office. I've lost track of the weeks.
Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, last week, yeah. And I'm very confident from that meeting that there'll be a very positive outcome. I just don't know what form it'll be in. I've recommended that funding continue direct from health to the local governments, not be delivered to the regions via the HHSs, because the HHS priorities may not necessarily always align with our understanding of mental health requirements for our LGs. So that was it. I'll take questions. And without questions, I will now go to the CEO's report. Can I have somebody move that be received, please? Councillor Plum, second to Councillor Rogers. Those in favour? 7-0. Now, Shane, two councillors out of the room, has asked Richard to remain because a number of issues that are raised in his report, probably better questions for them that might be best directed towards Richard.
Yeah.
So I'll let you lead off.
I think, so generally the last month, as council's aware, we did update our workplace health and safety management system, and we started consulting. So we went to every work site, run through the system. There's 6 weeks of time for staff to actually provide their feedback. That's currently in progress now. We're understanding how safety is being managed within our workplace, and our staff will take ownership of their own jobs. You'll hear us talk about SWIMs and standing operating procedures. So the staff have got a full commitment to being part of that future. We're looking at our works programs, as you'll see there, even to do with TIDS, which we've discussed in the budget. The Country Motor Ends, there's a review of the works program of that as well. Our valuation report, we received it, Bob was here today, we received that yesterday. The comprehensive valuations turned up in our asset management plan. Shell is with us now as well. Obviously visited Canberra with the Mayor. That was a fairly good week where there wasn't much downtime and all that. It was full on listening to all the ministers, but good value there. We're doing some due diligence training with our staff, so that's in the rollout at the moment as well. We're still working on that recruitment retention. We're going through a number of interviews at the moment. Finding some good applicants, so we're just processing them. A refuse facility, you'll see that we've had some ongoing issues with that. I'll touch on it briefly. We have got gates on the community. I know we'll come back with a bit of discussion. We're looking at a trial of closing the site outside of normal hours. One, for mitigation of access and fires. We seem to be having a few fires of late. We want to try and get onto that with a view to then going further afield and how we're going to manage the transition from the current dump into the new site. There is no simple answers, but we're working on that one. There'll be some signage, I think, going up shortly. We're looking at locking the gates. Concerns around that is how we mitigate with staff to make that happen. We have had some reports of people outside of hours visiting, so we're trying to stop that if we can. I'm sure we'll have a discussion on that coming up. Our policy frameworks, we've started rolling out policies, so staff are reviewing that at the moment to bring back to council. And the good ones, that's part of the reason why we kept Richard here, was obviously our sewage treatment plant, our water treatment plants. Been some contractor issues, but I think with Richard's here, we've resolved some of them and start the ball rolling to get that completed. Same goes for the Acacia Street bore. There's some issues getting that started, but that seems to be progressing at this point as well. Then we come into the major projects, which was the TIDS, the TMR, the RMPC, and the flood damage. More than happy for councillors to ask the questions to Richard. And then we come down to telemetry and SCADA, which we're still rolling on that. I'll draw your attention to item number 3, where it talks about PAT testing. That's got nothing to do with this chair. That's completely, and the wording of that is factory acceptance testing. Right, Richard, on that one. So to make sure that it's working completely. So we still have some teething issues in that, but that'll be commissioned and finishing of the areas. As Richard mentioned earlier, and we did know on roads, practical completion on what was zoned, waiting for the final bit to be done. And generally, I think at this point now is, the budget's been through. We've already had our thanks for support. I'm open for questions.
Councillors. So let's go to Richard's. Anything that might be from an engineering perspective first, so that we can, Richard, go back to get away from the Spanish Inquisition. Any questions for anything around the sewage treatment plant or the roadworks? And if there are any questions, I understand councillors might have conflict of interest in some of that, but we're not, no decision, so councillors happy to stay. Looks like the sewage treatment plant stuff's just started to tick back along again, and the engagement peak there's going to tidy up a few of them loose ends.
Yes.
Just the one thing that might cause a little bit of a construction delay would be the stuff coming from repump, would that be right?
Yeah, so I believe I'm still chasing up a new update from them, but there's just some lead times with getting things on site, so they're still expected to.
Still talking end of July.
A bit later for some of
Maybe
that,
a bit later.
some of that sort of stuff. It's probably more August, some sort of time finish. Commissioning at the moment sort of scheduled for September. Unfortunately, just some delays with getting some parts ordered and things like that. I think I think we had a 20-week lead time or something like that originally, so that caused some delays.
But there is a bit of light at the end of the tunnel now. It was sort of static there for quite some time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I am in the process chasing another update, which I'll pass on to Shane and putting together a program for that whole ball.
Right. Councillors, any questions further for Richard?
No, not for Richard directly, Mr Mayor, but where are we and what do we have planned for the replacement of Director of Works?
We're meeting with candidates right now.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, right now. Yeah, we have one coming for a discussion today, tomorrow. We've got two others we're talking with, so I should have some news to come back to council.
Yeah.
Through agencies and through other venues.
Right, Richard, I think we can thank you very much for staying around. Thank you very much for your advice regarding those tender evaluations as well.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Richard. All right, now questions for Shane, for the broader part of his report. Councillor Rogers.
Shane, the comprehensive road valuation, so it's all been completed. I was just wondering who now does the valuation and condition with that information?
The first part that goes to the accounting team to upgrade. We're just reviewing the findings to see where we're sitting with, if we're comfortable with all the data. The second part of that was the asset management plan, which we received that yesterday. So now it's just completing the add-ins, and they'll be ready to be presented to council. So comprehensive valuations, we're just trying to read through that and get the assumptions. I think we talk about a 10%.
Some of the methodologies around their decision or their recommendations on useful life of roads and components of the roads is the things we're looking at.
Are you not happy with them there by change? Or are they questionable or just different?
They're different. So they're standardised. So initially what they've done is they've standardised the component of road across the region. So the sub-base layer is at the moment in our current methodology, some of that's 50 years, some of that's 200 years. And they've standardised it across the region to one single number, which is a good way to go, but whether that number is how they come to that sort of number, that number as their choice is, I suppose, where we're looking into.
We just need to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Before that comes to council, you'll present that to the audit risk committee for their adoption, and then we'll come to here for
The valuation itself
The valuation.
typically doesn't
No.
typically come to council.
That's an
No.
accounting.
Yeah.
But it'll go to them, be accepted by audit risk, and then the asset management plan component of it will come to council though. It won't need to go via audit.
The asset management plan doesn't go through. Well, it does get mentioned at the audit committee meetings, but it's council's decision on how we manage our assets.
From the face of it, it's very good.
Thank you. And also just the closing the dump spot here from the 3rd of July, which is Monday.
The plan was to look at locking it in.
But are we going to do that on Monday, or has it been extended? Because has there been any community, like I feel like they need to have some, like, a lead time, 2
I'm
or 3
happy for
weeks at
council
least
to
to
provide me
know
with some direction.
that it's going to be closed. That's why, like, if we just lock the gates on Monday without, has there been any, like, notices put out around town or anything?
Following today's meeting, we've got a bit of a flood from social media and everything else, but I take your point, there's not a
Like,
lead
yeah, it's
time.
only,
We were pushing fairly quickly, to try and book
yeah.
out of hours visits.
Yeah. Do you think a week's enough? I'm just actually asking other councillors, do you think a week is enough or should we,
I think the less time the better.
do you think so?
Well, like honestly, they can't be trusted to not burn. There's multiple
Put
people.
a radio announcement on, just to get it to a lot of people, like, because I don't think Facebook and just putting the notices up in our email may not reach enough people, but I know the radio doesn't, it reaches a lot.
I'm happy for whatever method, but I don't think we can delay it anymore when we're seeing 3 and 4 fires a day being lit by multiple visits to the dump.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I would say by day 3 of the first week that we close it, word will be able to.
Everyone will know.
Done. And
Unfortunately, I agree with you, unfortunately, it's, especially in the last couple of weeks, it's got beyond the joke. I thought it was tracking along quite well with
so did I.
how it had been tidied up and the minimisation of the fires and the frequency of them, but obviously not.
Unfortunately, I've spent most of the last 3 weeks in either Sydney, Canberra or Brisbane. And trust me, Buckhorn's a much nicer place even when it's on fire than any one of those 3 cities. But it is ridiculous, like not out of control bad. And I was the one who suggested to the CEO the date of the 3rd, and I'm happy to go back a week if that's what the majority of council, but I provided that direction some time ago that we work towards the start of the financial year is the date to kick in the new rules. And I'm happy to take all the heat on this actually, despite it being in the CEO's report, because it is direction from the Mayor. The idea of the closed facility with supervised staff during that hour is only transitioning to whatever the model we have at the new facility is that hasn't yet been developed. It will require supervision or we're going to have the same problem there. So the cost of having a labourer or somebody who, realistically there's activities that can occur almost daily at the dump anyway. If they're skilled and can operate the backhoe or the skid steer, they're not going to just be sitting there reading, a novel most of the time. So, and when we transition to the new facility, they're going to be manning the gate. Yes, you take that, put it in this location, put green waste there. So we're transitioning the community towards understanding that before that operational model is fully developed. We finally had some traction with one potential provider of services for that operational plan that's come out of the woodwork in the last couple of days, or couple of weeks. But I had hoped that with the remediation work we'd undertaken, we might have just been able to, as Councillor Arthur said, just tick along until we got to the new facility. It would be obvious to me that we can't now. And so I suggested in very clear and direct terms to the CEO, we stick with the original structure of the first of financial year, because when I suggested back in January, February that we were meeting to do it quickly, that remediation work that was taken on, whilst ever we had 3 and 4 trucks and an excavator out there wasn't one fire a day. But that's only because no one was going to light the fire while we had 5 and 6 staff there. The minute our staff go, someone goes out there with the lawn clippings, oh, look at that. It's like the green waste pile up. So,
how long does it take a radio announcement? If we, is there how long before they can put one up? Like if
Following today, we can do it today.
and it could be up like tomorrow. It's not like a week. Yeah, I'd be happy if we could just get the word out to as many people as we possibly can before Monday.
when's the Gazette going to go out? It's this week, I think, too. And
Following
Is
this
that going
meeting,
out?
it's going.
Oh, that's great.
I think that we need to have someone out there just to keep an eye on it for a week or two.
Yeah.
just-
No, it'll be permanently there. From
Oh,
In
so
those
it doesn't
if
stay
it's
there.
unlocked, there'll be a council staff member there.
Oh, it doesn't stay
The
there.
weekend's going to be a challenge. I acknowledge that there still could be some issues for the first little bit because of overtime and getting volunteers and so forth. And I'm sure that that's when the fires will be, and I'm going to cop all manner of criticism. But Monday to Friday, in the very first outlet, there will be somebody in that facility wherever the locks are under,
So
and perhaps even weekends as well. But definitely Monday to Friday.
I don't know whether a lot of people can listen to radio, but
Well, I'm happy with more people to get the word. If there's only 10 people listening to it, that's 10 people that know
Community billboard, like the digital
the
one.
digital ones.
but if it's going out, if it's going to be out on there, I wouldn't think that it needs to be there.
If I can say, it's sad that the
I
actions
think
of few
it needs
people
to be
made us do this, but we have no choice. Because we're also in fire season. So
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree it's disappointing, but I don't think that long term the cost we're wearing short term is actually going to be anything that we will be able to build. It's not like the cost, we've just bought it for it. If we had actually been given an operational plan 3 years ago, we would already be operating in an environment where we had a person costed to that location. Now, it's possibly going to wreak havoc on our waste budget, but we knew there was going to be operational imperatives this year when that got handed down. And as I said in my comments at the very start of the first meeting today, there's going to need to be continued focus on waste within future operational budgets to keep that from spiralling out of control. At this stage, it's not envisaged that this approach will be rolled out at any of the other 4 landfills because they're not posing the same problem.
So, as people that are going on and reading these reports and change, should we add it in there that will be consulted?
If they're reading it, they can look at this camera and say there will be a council staff member there whilst the gates are open. And in some ways, you know what, I hope they don't, because then whoever it is might actually get caught.
Yeah, that's
Like, I'm not suggesting we're going to have them hiding in the bushes, but realistically, if they're stupid enough, as these people clearly are, to light fire out there and they get caught, I don't care how many arson charges are get laid against them. They're breaching not only the Environmental Protection Act, they're breaching the livelihoods of firefighters and people who live in the fringes of our commons. They're impacting on the quality of life of people who live on the southern part of our Corbin. Like, I don't really have any sympathy for them. It might have been the normal 30 years ago to burn the dump. The world's moved into the 21st century sometime after 2000, and it's not accepted practice to burn municipal waste facilities. Especially with the amount of plastic and rubberised compounds that are in domestic waste today, as opposed to when it was just paper and cartons in the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s and 70s. We had that discussion, we did the waste inspection. The amount of plasticized material that's thrown away today as opposed to 40, 50 years ago means that the toxicity of the smoke and the visual impairment from it is way worse than it was when we were all children.
Yep.
I'm happy to take all of the responsibility for that.
So, Mr Mayor, just to say again, there will be a council staff member from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. 5 days a week, RDOs included.
RDOs are like weekends. They're going to be challenging in the very early days to manage.
We're trying to work out how we can do it.
The early doors it's going to be. And look, occasionally, you know, I would hate for the CEO ride to get caught in our own words. I'm quite confident that at some point during the day they're going to be called back to the depot, or they're going to go back there and get a piece of equipment. Like human nature. We're going to take job site vans out there for them to have toilet facilities. All of those things are still got to be worked through. But the intent certainly is that where practically possible, like you're going to have an illness, someone can't come to work today because they're sick, well, you're probably not going to shut down a TMR job to take a labourer and put them back at the landfill. But where our human resources allow us the capacity to have that facility manned while it's open, it will be. I'm not fastidious enough to suggest that I direct the CEO to close it if you didn't have a staff member available. That's unfair on the community. The hours of operation will be what they are, and it will be within our best endeavours to make sure it's manned during those hours.
I could envisage in the future, Mr Mayor, that there will have to be a contractor brought in, I'd imagine.
It's a model that's used locally elsewhere. Longreach have done this. They use the Proterra Group to manage their landfill facility. It's a skill set that is unique. They bring their own equipment like compactors and so forth. It could quite well be, and it's another job within the community, whether it's contractor or council owned, it's still a job. Waste movers such as JJ Richards for Cleanaway also operate in that space, so it's not as if there's a monopoly on people who do it, but our volume of waste poses some challenges. You were asking questions. Did you have any?
That's all.
I guess my would be supervision on the site, so we use the word supervision. Then you might not have someone there, because there will be times when they have to break it.
Compulsory training, you know, like the safety training the staff have been engaged in, all of the staff out of one stream are required for training that day. Well, you're probably not going to move someone out of HR to go down and sit at the dump, you know what I mean? Like it's where practical, but and Will it be perfect? Will it stop the fires overnight? Is someone going to do the wrong thing? Probably. But we have to demonstrate to the community our best intent to try and minimise the episodes or outings. As I say, it's not the same issue in other communities, but do they have facilities burn? Of course they do. But they're not posing due to prevailing winds or lack of prevalence of fires. And the other fact is, remember that predominantly all of the other facilities are subterranean. There's actually a hole, so the smoke's funneled, whereas here is surface level. The waste sits on top of the ground, so it disperses immediately the fire starts, it goes out. And there's no chimney funneling effect as there is at, say, Aramac or Alpha, where the smoke goes up. Then eventually it drifts over here, and I know, but here it's bad from the start if there's a southerly or southwesterly wind blow. I'm happy that, personally, and then I'll go to everyone else, I'm happy for you to do it as soon as you can practically get the provisions in place for it to happen, and some sort of notification publicly. If it meant out another week to get the Gazette out, if there was a hold up with that, and a radio ad or Facebook, well, we've started to indicate that the third's it, so the residents should expect that any time from the third on, they could get there out of the house and set gates locked. What I'd suggest is that you deliver it as fast as you practically can outside of that. Are we happy with that? Councillor Peebles?
Yes.
All right, questions on that or else?
Just
Councillor?
one question on that. Going back quite a few years ago, people used to just dump their rubbish wherever they felt like it. That's probably something we'll just have to really keep a close eye on and let it start again.
I would agree. The truck stops in areas where there's other bins will be the first spot we'll start to see that.
Just anywhere on the common.
I know, that'll follow. Illegal dumping's been an issue right across Queensland since regulated waste was impacted. I know, Dean, you've worked with a few regulated waste councils where you start to charge them for it. Like, so here, at least we're not charging them to access the dump, but we're limiting their hours of access. So it's going to happen. I know it will, you're right. But councils have got some innovative strategies to deal with that there that you'd be aware of.
We could possibly put it in nothing.
We'll be able to follow up on it if we're aware of who it is. We're going to.
Maybe we should advertise that in this, that any illegal dumping will be fined for it. Just to get it right out there from the word go that that's what we're going to be happening for.
Yeah, illegal dumping or dumping else other than landfills is a criminal offence.
Yeah. Just get it out there from the word go. We're going to push it for it.
Further questions for Shane's report, either regarding waste or any other item in there? All right, time being 12:30, do you want to break for lunch? He has arrived.
Thank you.
And then after lunch we will continue with CRC. Didn't work.